Hi, hello, I'm Sam Harrison. I read, review, and discuss fantasy and science fiction books. And today, after a little bit of a hiatus, we're back in the Wandering Inn. So, this is going to be a full spoiler discussion for chapters 22K and 23 of Volume 2 of The Wandering Inn. This is going to be an interesting one because there's a lot going on in chapter 22K, but I also do have one minor criticism. And then chapter 23 I felt was really good, and I felt was kind of, leading us into something interesting. So let's crack open a drink and get to it. So, chapter 22K. Oh, this is my cat Gus, by the way. He wanted to be in the video, and that's all I said. It was okay. So, 22K. This chapter is it's kind of from the point of view of two characters. One being Ghazi, who we know and, as discussed, do not like, and then the other is a character called Trey, who I will get to in a moment. So, Ghazi is basically going home, having heard that Floss, the King of Destruction, has woken up, and he's been like slumbering. Gus has decided he doesn't want to be in the video now, so he's just sat very slightly out of frame. Anyway, so the king has woken up, and he finds out about this from Ryoka, who's found out about it from, like, I think from her text chain and like from the call or whatever at the beginning of Volume 2. And we find out that he has woken up because he had two people from our world just kind of drop in on him. There's a lot of really interesting stuff in this chapter. So we're introduced to a lot of characters, introduced to a lot of named characters. So we have a lady called Mars, a birdman called Garudon, I think, or Garuda. Yeah, I think it's Garuda, which is funny because Garuda is, I think it's like a wind god or something in like Final Fantasy, and there's obviously the Gerudo in Zelda, like the rock people or whatever. So there's a lot of video game characters that use Gerudo, similar types of language, and I think we know that Pirate Arbor is a video game player, so probably likely there's some inspiration there. Maybe the Garuda are the bird people in Zelda. That would make sense for the reference, but maybe just Pirate Arbor arrived at the same name with no thinking. Does that make sense? No knowledge of the thing it's possibly referencing. Anyway, so we spend a lot more time with Floss in this chapter. He's like, the thing that I really liked about the character was how you saw him through everyone else's eyes, and different, like Ghazi and then Trey kind of had different viewpoints on him, which was really interesting and well done. And it's interesting that everyone was like terrified of Ghazi, because that kind of makes sense. Like, even though Mars is more powerful than her, there's kind of something going on there. There's obviously a rivalry / enmity between the two, and it was interesting to see. What else? I really liked the concept of the like crumbling city. Because obviously Floss has been like hidden away, slumbering. There's a bit where the like head housekeeper, whatever his name's like Ornithon or something. He was like, oh, the king doesn't need to eat, so he forgets that other people need to, and that was quite interesting. So like, I think it was said that he'd just been sat in that chair for like 6 years, literally just sat in a chair for 6 years, a throne probably, sat in his throne for like 6 years, just kind of like thinking and like despondent. Interesting. I'd like to see what led to that. There was a bit at the where they talked about how Floss was like, oh well, um, the choice there was like no choice for what he was doing, and like if they had continued to do XYZ, then they would have been defeated anyway. There's a lot of like, it's quite interesting because he's almost painted as like a heroic figure, but I think that the rest of the world probably sees him as a villain or like an antagonist or threat. Like even Trey, like I think a lot of it is like his presence, and I assume that there's some sort of skills going on there. It seems like he's a strategist from like Snatched things that I heard when I say heard, I actually didn't listen to the audiobook at all for this one. I read the whole thing. So yeah, I think good chapter. Yeah, really good chapter. Again, I think there's just so much information in this one. This was a really heavy world building chapter that I really enjoyed. There's another cat literally right here. Can we get two cats in the same video? Not in the same shot, but in the same video. That would be good. Barry, you coming up? Here he is. So, yeah, we got a lot of world building detail in this. I keep wanting to say issue or episode. I guess episode is almost right because it's like episodic, but chapter. Sorry about the cat, but chapter is obviously more accurate. So yeah, this chapter was a really good one. I really like the introduction of all these characters, and I like the concept of the seven. So like, these seven like legendary figures, and now two of them were dead previously, and we find out that Drevish, the architect, which unfortunately he's dead, because I thought that his was the like most interesting sounding of the seven, like a non-combat, non-warrior type character. So there's now three of them dead. I don't know whether Orthanon, he counted as a member of the seven. I don't think he does. But there's three back in the kingdom. So yeah, very interesting to learn a bit more about those characters. And one of the interesting things about the interludes and stuff in Wandering In is it makes me like crave more of those POVs. And I try not to look ahead because like we only had one king POV, king interlude in volume 1, and I know that next week's one is a Torren chapter, and as you guys know, I love Torren, but don't think there's going to be any more king stuff for a little while. It'd be really good if the king stuff was kind of happening in the background and we got more of those chapters, and then that those characters, the seven and Floss, became like material antagonists to the rest of the crew. So at the moment they could be like obviously Gazi is an antagonist, but she can't portal across the world back and forth all the time, because otherwise, why would people have stuff like runners or whatever if portal was that easy to do? And I feel like they talked about how it wasn't easy to do. So what else did I think was really good in this chapter? So yeah, love the world building, love the characters, really like the relationships between the remaining members of the seven that you meet, and like how they are kind of antagonistic towards each other in like competition to be like Floss's favorite, although it does seem like Gazi is his favorite, or at least maybe that's how it feels from the point of views that we got. It might not actually be the case. Interesting that Mars brought the massive bag full of magic gear, which is cool. It's nice to see more Like, I think magical items are a really cool thing that's not actually weirdly used in that much in a lot of the fantasy that I read. Like, a lot of the fantasy that I read tends to be more like either you're a magician or wizard or whatever, and you have that power inbuilt in you, or it's like, there might be a magic sword or something, but like, what does the sword specifically do or whatever? Like, there's a sword, for example, there's a sword made of crystal in Wheel of Time that just like amps up your magic casting ability, but doesn't like set on fire or like shoot lasers or whatever. Not that I'm saying that's particularly bad. I just like really like seeing this as a different thing. Like, obviously, Wandering is very inspired by video games. You have the level system, skills, things like that, and it makes sense to have stuff like magic items in these stories where you tend not to get that many of them in modern fantasy stuff that I'm reading, because it's kind of like, I don't know. I think people think like having a magic sword is a bit gauche or whatever, but like, whatever, I enjoy it. So yeah, lots of magic swords. That was cool. I don't know what to make of Floss yet, apart from the fact that I really enjoyed this chapter. I didn't really enjoy the King interlude as much last time. It was kind of more like, I'm curious, but this chapter is taking way too long to get me to any information or tell me anything. It was more like vibes than like actual story, and I'm glad to have story in this particular chapter. Now, I've got to talk about one problem that I have with this chapter, and this is going to sound so petty and so pedantic. Trey, right? Trey is not a name that English people have, especially the English people as they are described to be. Like, you might see someone called Trey in, like, I don't know. Like, Trey is a very American name, right? And the more and more I read these books, the more I think that Pirate Arbor is American. I had thought initially that they were from Europe somewhere, but like, a European, I don't think, would call an English person Trey. I don't know why I thought they were European. Maybe it was just like weird, like, association or something. Anyway, so they're clearly American, and they wouldn't call an English person Trey. And like, I know this is petty, but these kids are meant to be 16, right? This story was written between 2017 and 2018, and I checked the Office of National Statistics in the UK, which you can do. Like, our stats for baby names are public. Like, we used the baby name stats list to try and pick traditional but not popular baby names for both of our children, because we want our names to be like traditional English normal names, but not like so common that you would, I didn't want our son, whose name is Peter, for example, if we'd named him like Oliver, there'd have been like 6 Olivers in his class. Like, we wanted to make sure that his name was like traditional and sensible and easy to spell, but also like not super common. Anyway, so I looked at the Office of National Statistics for baby names, and in 2001, which is likely when these twins would have been born, there were only 45 people in the entire UK named Trey, less than 0.012% of births. So like, it's an extremely uncommon name, and it's so American. Like, it doesn't. And then when they like, the first thing that they talk about with one of the first things that Pirate Arbor talks about with Trey is like, he doesn't like cricket, and he like doesn't like jam, and like, and then like, he mentions the Queen on the next page, and it's like, I get it. There are British stereotypes, but as a British person, I feel like you could just have been like, well, this character's name is Trevor instead of Trey. Trevor, very, very, very English name. or like Terry, or like there's lots of English names that begin with T if that's what you want to do. And I have to say I didn't get anything really from these two characters, Trey and Teresa. Mostly I was distracted by both of their names because Teresa is, from every Teresa I've ever met, has been spelt Theresa, whereas I think Teresa is a more common American spelling. So both times these characters are kind of pulled out of the story. And I've talked about this a bit before when talking about Ryoka, where Pirate Abel would be like, oh yeah, she was, a half decent runner and she ran 100 miles in 7 hours or something. And like, well, if she was a half decent runner, she'd be running like 10 miles in 2 hours and struggling with it. Like here's an example of like the average 5k time, right? 5k is 3 miles. The average 5k time like worldwide is like 35 minutes. So if you think about that, like knowing the facts that I know about English people, English names, knowing the things about running, these things not being fact checked when they're so easy to fact check, really pulls me out of the story. And like, I know people have said in the comments before, like, oh, don't take Pirate Arbor too seriously when it comes to like maps and distances and stuff like that. But like, those are important. I mean, to me, maybe not to like every reader. And like, you can overlook stuff and you can like stretch the imagination. For example, like there were 45 kids called Trey that year, so maybe this was one of them. But like, there's so many more English names that are traditionally English, not traditionally American, that they could have gone with. I've been ranting on this for like 6 minutes. Let's get on to chapter 23. I still really enjoyed chapter 22, but it took me literally like an hour and a half to read this last night because I kept getting pulled out of it by like mentions of Trey, and then I was like, oh well, let me think about that. Like, and then I was like, well, I have to look up now and see how common it was, so that I'd know that I'm not being unfair or like crazy about it. But yeah, annoying, but that's me being a bit pedantic in some cases, but also like, I know I've said this before, but like in this video, fact checking stuff when you have Google is so easy, and like it. Anyway, so yeah, the next chapter is a really interesting one because we get quite a few different points of view. So first off, we come straight back to Erin with the table full of flowers, and the flowers seem to be psychedelic, I guess. And like, we also get an interesting thing from Tauren where Tauren says, or Tauren in his like POV chat section, there's like a couple of paragraphs of Tauren, and like Tauren is like that he disagrees with the order that he's been given by Erin, and he remarks in his head that that's like the first time that he was like, oh, actually, that instruction I've been given was dumb. Like, it's not a good instruction. Very good, very interesting. We then move on to Celis POV, which is one of the first Celis POV. I think we've had some before, but like this is the first extended one. Interesting to be inside Celis's head. The one thing I would say is that it didn't really feel very different to being in any other characters. Like Kershia, when you read her POVs, they do feel a bit different, whereas Celis was kind of same as everyone else. Celis is watching the princess be exiled. Instead of executing her for the things that she's done, the city is too afraid that she's like a nobleman's daughter or something like that, and so is just going to exile her. But in order to placate the gnolls who want her executed, she's being exiled in the middle of winter with like rags and 1 day's food. So they're, everyone's like, well, she'll be dead within like 1 to 2 hours, but the gnolls are still like shouting and out for blood, despite Kershia being like, no, like, what's the point? We learn that, in fact, before we get to that, Celis and Pisces chat, and Pisces is like, I want to be in the Adventurers Guild. And eventually it comes to Celis going like, right, if you save this girl by going and telling Eren about her, then I'll get you in as a bronze level adventurer, which is really interesting. Pisces is an adventure necromancer, quite funny. Looking forward to seeing more from that. I'd love to get like a Pisces short novel style thing, like 5 or 6 like 10k word chapters from Pisces' point of view. That's like Pisces going on an adventure with some other characters. Very interesting. And like, I mean, we're skipping a little bit, but Cheeria invites him to be on the reformed Horns of Hammerad, which is really exciting. Definitely really liked the concept of the Horns as like an adventuring band, and like that gave us a really good view on that other side of fantasy stuff. So normally fantasy books are about the adventurers, but in these books obviously they're about like Eren, who's an innkeeper, and Ryoka, who is a courier. Well, a runner. Courier is a specific term, but she's in a real world term, she's kind of a courier. It's like a mailman, male woman, I guess. And then yeah, so we do spend some more time in Kershia's head, and we find out that Kershia was hiding a ton of spell books, which is very interesting. And obviously, that's like quite a big deal. She had all these incredibly rare spell books, and the goal that she had was to give the spell books to the other gnolls so that their children could learn magic. And sorry, cat scratching at the door. Give them to the other gnolls so that they could learn magic, and then they'd be a magical people in a way that they currently aren't, which would have been exciting, but they all got burned up. And Kershia's like, oh, if only I jumped in front of the fireball instead of out of the way, which is dark, but interesting. I look forward to finding out more of what's going on with the gnolls. It's probably going to be, when I pick the book back up, sometime in December or January, now knowing that I'm planning on taking a break. Also, what else did we need to talk about? I think that's pretty much everything. Cheeria has been asked by Eren to help her farm these flowers, which I guess you can do. We'll find out. And also Torren has run off to do some leveling because he wants to level more, because he's like getting smarter with each level. Again, very interesting. And then the final thing is that it says that Eren has her first employee. And I think that is trying to... Barry, come here. I think that means that Eren is trying to... is going to hire the princess. And it says that... And that was the worst mistake she's made, or she would come to regret it, or something like that. And again, very interesting. There's been some comments recently about how the princess is quite a big and important character. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how she integrates with everyone. Obviously, next week is a Torren chapter. I don't know what the chapter after that is. I think it's just a regular chapter. That's quite good for the flow of these videos as well, to have like one chapter from one point of view and then one from the main cast again. So that'll be a good episode too, I think. And then, unless I'm wrong, there may be one more week's episode after that. I'm not sure. But we're stopping just before the clown side story. That's where I'm going to be stopping the weekly episodes. I think I'll probably do a whole episode about just the clown. But then when I get back into... Because this is like... It says specifically side story, not like interlude. And being a side story, I feel like... I don't know, you guys can tell me in the comments if you'd be interested, but it feels like something that would be better kind of put together as an actual episode, kind of like as not an epilogue to this series of chapter by chapters, but like if I do that separately as like its own little feature, I think that will work. Again, please let me know in the comments if that's something you aren't interested in. But if you are, then I'm planning on making it. So what you have to do is convince me not to if it's not worth my time. Yeah, looking forward to reading more. I would like to get into my first side story. I don't think we've really had a side story yet. We haven't had like multiple chapters in a row from another point of view. It's always been like Eren and Ryoka and then like a guest every now and then. So yeah, looking forward to something new and interesting. If you have missed the last few episodes, I just wanted to let you know, as I said, this series is ending, the chapter by chapter recaps. I honestly, I would just like to read faster. And the only way I'm going to do that is by treating The Wandering Inn instead of I'm going to read a couple of chapters a week. I'm going to be shifting it into this is my main read. So at the moment, I'm really one of those people who can only read one book at a time. And so I think that it's been harder to give my separated attention to The Wandering Inn. And also, I don't know, I just want to catch up. Like, I'm not enjoying Volume 2 as much as I enjoyed Volume 1 because, it's older writing. It's not as good as the writing in the rewrite of Volume 1. And I just kind of want to not skip ahead, but I want to get to where the really good stuff is faster. So for those of you who've been saying to do so, yeah, I think it's a really good idea. And I'm also planning on trying to do something Wandering Inny every month, whether it's an update on where I am, a full review if I finish a volume, or like things like character tier lists or side story videos like this one about the clown. So yeah, any things that you guys would like to see in terms of Wandering Inn content, please do drop down in the comments below. And after the chapters finish, then like I said again, I'll be doing the clown at some point, probably after I finish Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson, which comes out at the end of next week. So that'll be 2 or 3 weeks time, I expect. And then after the clown, you probably won't hear from me again on Wandering Inn until I finish the book. And again, like I think I'll return for the clown in December, and then come back again for the end of volume. Try and read to the end of Volume 2, Book 2, in January-ish. Because like if you think like even doing 2 chapters a week, I probably wouldn't finish Volume 2 next year, let alone like I would like to finish soon so I can move on to bigger and better things in The Wandering Inn. So as people often say that I've seen some people say like, oh, it really clicked for me in like Volume 3 or Volume 4, and I just want to get to that. I've already bought the ebooks for actually no, I haven't bought the ebook for Volume 3. I think I bought the audiobook for Volume 3. Yeah, I haven't bought the ebook for Volume 3. I will get to it though. I should put them on my wish list so I can see when they get discounted. That would be a good idea. But yeah, so I don't want to commit to anything like I have done with like Wheel of Time and say like I'm going to read one Wandering Inn every single month. But I would like to get a lot more caught up quicker. So, and maybe that'll mean that I want to read fully caught up next year or something. The plan is to try and be caught up by the end of 2026. I'm also going down in terms of videos next year. I won't be doing 5 a week. So that kind of means that I don't have as much space to do Wandering Inn videos, but I do have more space to read The Wandering Inn, which I think is probably the best way to do it. Anyway, I'm rambling now, so let's close this video out. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Please give it a like, and of course, if you have not subscribed to the channel, join the community, subscribe away. And I've asked you guys a load of times this week to put comments in for feedback in terms of what you're looking for and what you like, but also let me know your thoughts on this chapter. If I am being petty and pedantic about the things that I've been petty and pedantic about, please don't tell me. I'm already aware. Thanks so much for watching. I'll speak to you tomorrow.